My name's Craig Pearson. I'm the Principal Business Analyst who has been involved with SData more or less since the start of the project, a number of years now. And I've got with me today Darren Cockram, who is a Principal Developer here in the UK, who is instrumental in developing the SData adapter that is part of the Sage 50 product, and is also instrumental in the development of the SIF, which is the Sage Integration Framework. And that is the framework we'll be using as part of the code demonstration later. First of all, I wanted to take everybody through the background of SData, what it is and how we are where we are today, just by explaining, why we needed something like SData. It came about because Sage as a company have a number of challenges in the areas of integration and third-party product development. We've got a number of products that have a number of SDKs. Every application, I think, within Sage has its own custom SDK, and we've got teams, both Sage teams and external teams, building integrations to our product through those SDKs. This is a domestic problem for every country, but also a global issue. We have a number of products now that cross boundaries. So we are seeing situations where development teams in many, many countries are working with these SDKs. And a lot of our SDKs are developed for the desktop environment, and we're moving forward now with the web and with mobile device connectivity. A lot of our legacy SDKs don't lend themselves very well to developments of that kind. So the intention behind SData was to improve the integration approach, both on-premise but also on the web and on mobile devices. And there's an underlying principle to this, and that is the ability to write an integration or an interface to one product and for it to work with many other products. So a simple example we're seeing here in the UK is that you develop an interface to Sage 50 accounts, and the same interface works with Sage 1000. Same protocol in terms of SData, same data model in terms of common schemas. Developers write one interface and it works with many back-end products. SData, what is it? SData is based on a RESTful web service. RESTful stands for Representational State Transfer. And the way I always describe that is that everything becomes a resource that you can address using a URL. URLs are things that we use all of the time when we are connecting to websites. We typically type these into our browsers and we get back some information via the web. The information we get back is a resource, and typically that describes what RESTful web services is about. Instead of getting a web page back, though, you typically get an Atom feed of data. Atom is another standard. This is not something that Sage has developed, but it's something that is based on RSS, really simple syndication. And that in itself is just based on XML structured text. Now, what we do is we represent resources through Atom feeds, and we embellish those feeds to comply with the rules of SData. So we've added things through the SData protocol to handle some user interface extensions, how data should be sorted and presented, how large volumes of data should be paged, and how you can request the specific data you want. If the resource you're trying to connect to is a piece of Sage business data, now that could be quite large, so you need to control the request for the data that you want to receive. That is what is meant by payload control. SData itself is based on secure HTTP, so this is providing a level of security when data is being transferred via the network. SData also leverages standard HTTP calls for not only read routines, which are GET routines, but also for posting, putting, and deleting data. Through HTTP, you can issue a post operation, which is effectively a create. So by putting back some data to an application, you can create and update and delete data. And that's a very powerful concept that SData supports. It also supports things like data concurrency, security in terms of sign-in, batching of data. If you want to create large volumes of data, then there are routines for batching data. Other areas such as how you discover the web services that an application provides, and also a basic query syntax language to control the kind of data you want retrieved from an SData provider. Now, as I go on through the session, I'll be using the terms provider and consumer. What we're talking about today is consuming SData feeds. A provider application is typically a Sage application which is responding to requests for data, very much like a web server. You know, all of our applications moving forward will become web servers responding to requests from SData consumers, and I'll be talking more about that later. The whole standard itself is open source and is available via the web at the sdata.sage.com website. Underpinning all of this is the common data schema model, which is an attempt to try and standardize the data that exists in all of the various Sage applications. This way we move towards the model of developing single interfaces. So the way it's described is that SData is basically the language, and the common schemas are the book written in that language. They describe the data that is exchanged between applications. I'm going to talk a bit more about the common data schemas because these play an important part in SData interactions. They basically define the resource kinds or the data entities that are shared across Sage applications. They use a standard XML schema definition to describe their structure. So any tooling that supports XSD, will support the data schemas. Through that, we also get robust validation of the data model. And they are used within SData to provide the reference model for resources. So in a typical SData URL, what you see there is in blue is the URL structure that is mandated by SData. That is typically saying that you want to connect to a web server, you want to talk to a particular application using the language defined in a contract, and you want a particular resource. The resource in red would be defined in the common data schemas. There are a number of contract schemas around. Contracts are just groupings of entities that have some sort of logical grouping. So we've got various contracts around accounting and CRM integration. There are other contracts around HR and payroll. Typically, contracts are domain specific, so they collect a number of data entities into a particular contract because they typically would be used in an integration scenario or in some form of data sharing scenario. The accounting and CRM contract provides a library of quite a large number of entities, and these span things like sales invoices, purchase orders, delivery notes, and a range of other data elements. There is some new terminology because in our various products around the world, we always use slightly different names for things. So we introduced these terms such as commodities, which are descriptions of products or items. Different applications call things different names, so this is an attempt to standardize on that. Okay. We also have the concept of trading accounts, which are customer and supplier records. The kind of scenarios we're seeing it being used for is when a provider application needs to integrate with a consumer application, be that a CRM application consuming data from an accounting system, or it's an HR system exchanging data with a payroll system, or providing data to mobile devices. These are typical scenarios. These can be on-premise or they can be online versus on-premise. So typically CRM could be an online application and accounts would be an on-premise application. Obviously mobile, that would be a roaming application, whereas accounts could be either on-premise or in the cloud, depending on where the provider is sitting. You may also be providing data to a connected service. And connected services are part of Sage's forward strategy to broaden the offering to our customers. So, for example, an on-premise accounting application may be making data available to an online payment processing provider. It may also just be delivering data to a particular website. So SData, an SData-enabled accounts application, could be delivering data to, a website that can consume SData. These could be Sage or non-Sage built websites, and there may even be things like eBay and commercial websites. Underpinning all of this is the need to make your application a provider application, and there is a separate video available that will tell you how to do that. The focus of today is to talk about the consumer application. In addition to all of this, and the subject of another video is the Sage Secure Gateway. Now, this is a way in which you can securely provide access to on-premise data to your clients. So when you have an on-premise SData provider, you can use the Secure Gateway to route requests in via the internet. So you can have third-party applications, cloud-based applications on the web, tunneling in securely to an on-premise Sage customer. And there will be a separate session on that available. What you shouldn't be using SData for is very deep product customization or integration. If you need to insert forms into another application, or if you need to extend database tables in those applications, then SData just would not be used in those scenarios. Additionally, some high performance on-premise integration scenarios just wouldn't be suitable for SData. A typical one being, the population of business intelligence data cubes, because of the sheer volumes of data being transferred. We'll talk more now about being an SData consumer. Now, what I'm sharing with you there is some online SData endpoints that are available on the Sage network, and some are available on the public network. These can be used as trial endpoints, so you can take a look at SData feeds, you can pull down the Atom data and look at it, using a suitable tool, just to better understand how SData operates. The plan is to keep these endpoints available for general use, and we'll be using one of those as part of our demo today. Now, what does it take to write a consumer to consume these SData feeds? Well, there's various components that make this up. The first one being the Sage Integration Framework, or the SIF, and we'll come on to that in more detail soon. You also need your favorite development environment, and for the purposes of today's demonstration, we'll be using Visual Studio. You can also have additional optional tools, such as there is a Visual Studio plugin for SData, which gives you quicker access to provider data. These are available for your use. And we'll talk about writing one now. So with that, I'll hand over to the online code demonstration.